The British Polio Fellowship has been working with fashion designer Aaliyah Lee to create a fashion collection with a little bit of a twist, and it's to raise awareness of post-polio syndrome on PPS Day.
We've done a wearable collection incorporating football products into the designs. So I've used football pump valves, football studs, and used them as like embellishments on the designs.
It's vital that we raise awareness about post-polio syndrome, and with the help of Crystal Palace we're going to do that on the 17th of October. The fashion collection is going to be launched at half-time.
I didn't know much about the condition actually, but through Julia, a good friend of mine, I got to learn a little bit more, and that's what we're here to, help to raise awareness.
It's really important for me to be involved, having had the disease as an infant myself, and potentially I will have post-polio syndrome as I move on into later years. It's very debilitating and people don't understand that it is actually a recognised illness now.
We did some research recently and identified that post-polio syndrome is only recognised by about 4% of the 34 to 44-year-olds.
I'm starting to experience symptoms of post-polio syndrome. I visited my GP so many times, and it took several years before I got a proper diagnosis that it's the late effects of polio.
The symptoms of post-polio syndrome are new weakness, fatigue and pain in muscles which may or may not have been previously affected by the polio infection.
Many people think that polio is something consigned to the history books, but for 120,000 people in the UK it's a very real thing, and we felt by using a fashion shoot it would turn some heads.
The perfect opportunity of being able to showcase this collection at the Palace West Ham game on October the 17th is because it's a captive audience. There'll be people there who really know nothing about this post-polio syndrome. That's why it's so important that people know about it.
Lord Hunt of Kingseat.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the NHS 5-year forward view sets out a number of high-level objectives that will support better care for people living with long-term conditions, which includes post-polio syndrome. Our overall approach is to enable person-centred care so health services can work in partnership with people to manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. The Government wishes the British Polio Fellowship every success with its Post-Polio Syndrome Awareness Day this Thursday.
My Lords, I'm sure the Noble Lord's response on that latter point will be very welcome. He will be aware that it's estimated about 120,000 people are affected by post-polio syndrome. This will often occur years after they contracted polio, and it brings pain and tiredness. My Lords, the problem being that the NHS is largely unaware of the condition. There are very few specialist consultants, GPs don't usually recognise it, and the orthotic services are not geared up to provide some of the appliances that are necessary to ease the pain. My Lords, would the Noble Lord be prepared to look at this again and see whether some kind of national strategy or care pathway could be produced, which would lead to a much greater consistency of the provision in the health service?
And the Noble Lord is right. There is no specific pathway for people suffering from post-polio syndrome. The government or the NHS England have approached this on the basis of all long-term conditions rather than segmenting long-term conditions by individual disease category. But I'll be very happy to meet with him outside the House to discuss this.
My Lords, is the Noble Lord the Minister aware that the poliomyelitis virus attacks cells in the brainstem and spinal cord which give origin to the nerves that control the movement of the muscles, and hence if these cells are killed, the result is paralysis of the relevant muscles? Several authorities believe that in an acute attack of poliomyelitis that there are certain nerve cells which are damaged but recover, only later, some years later, to die prematurely, thus causing the post-polio syndrome of progressive muscular weakness. Surely, is it not the case that one important strategy is to have a graded exercise program to try to increase the power of those muscles which still retain a viable nerve supply?
Yes. Well, the Noble Lord is much more well-informed about this than I am. So I agree with him 110%. I think there are other aspects to treating this pernicious illness. Clearly, pain relief is important. I think particularly It raises the issue that GP practice that have a multidisciplinary team, that have physios, people who are experts in mobility, orthotics, in pain relief, in exercise, is very important.
My lords, people with post-polio syndrome often require the care of a wide range of different specialists, which makes the linking up of their care and treatments particularly crucial. What is the government doing to ensure that these can be linked up? And could he say whether any of the Vanguard sites are working on partnerships that will enable this to happen?
The NHS England's approach to most people who are suffering from long-term conditions is best summed up through their House of Care programme, which is very much based around the individual and their carers. It is personalised, and of course personal health budgets can have a big role to play with people with long-term complex chronic conditions.
Noble Lord the Minister, entirely content with the change that has now been developed, that we do not have single disease category strategies developed. I speak as the patron of the British Liver Trust, where we have argued long that there should be a strategy on liver disease, and this has been resisted. Yet here we find that with liver, we have an increasing number of people dying from cancers with it, yet no strategy exists because of the decision that you previously explained to us.
I agree that I would meet with the Noble Lord opposite to talk about this post-polio syndrome, but perhaps it raises wider issues in liver, for example, but other disease categories that we could cover at the same time.